Right. I think a lot of people have joined. Hello, everyone, again. Thank you for joining us tonight. And again, welcome to Untold Stories in Tech Hiring. My name is Brendan. As I said, I work at OfferZen, will be your host. Before we jump in, there are a few house rules for our webinar tonight. You can see them pop up here. So first of all, you can see us, but unfortunately, we can't see you. That might have its benefits as well. If you drop off the video, just use the same link that you just used to get here to come back again. It will still work. If you have questions, you can post them on the right in the questions tab. We'll take questions throughout the event and we'll try to answer as many as we can. I can't promise though, we make all of them. And you can use the chat tab to share interesting links or comments or articles even that you think tap into the conversation that we're having, which would add a lot of value to everybody joining. Then if you just joined and haven't introduced yourself yet, take a moment to introduce yourself by adding your name and the company you work for and the location you're dialing in from here in chat. Cool. So before we get going, for those of you who do not know OfferZen yet, I'd like to give you a little bit of context on why we exist, what it is that we do, and why we host events such as tonight. So OfferZen was founded in 2015 by two brothers in South Africa, has since expanded to the Netherlands and soon other cities in Europe as well, and is founded on the belief that software can greatly improve the current world that we live in. And we help accelerate that trend in two ways. So sorry, spoiler, there's a little bit of a pitch incoming now. I mean, we have to. So the first way we're doing this is by helping unlock the potential of developers by connecting them through great jobs on our tech talent marketplace. So how does that marketplace work? Every Monday, 150 developers roughly from the Netherlands, Europe, South Africa go live on our marketplace. These are carefully selected on quality and the intent to get hired. Companies subsequently can apply to them within a certain time frame with upfront salary and other information. And that makes hiring fast and frictionless. So if you're hiring, this is interesting. If you're hiring developers, this is interesting because you'll find unique developer talent that is ready to be hired, great human service to help you close those hires. And then we only charge a gentle price when you hire. Access is free. We're a kind company. So that's all the pitch you get. If you're hiring developers and are keen to learn if we could help you in particular, you and your company, just book an open chat with us. We're happy to explore that with you and see if this channel is something that you should be using. At the end of the webinar, there will be a link that redirects you to an option to book that chat. As a matter of fact, it might be easy. And if you could you just drop the link in chat so people can explore what we're all about and perhaps already book that chat. Cool, so that's one way. And then the other way that we help accelerate that trend is through investing in the tech community. So as a community-driven company, we learned that by supporting the tech community and sharing knowledge, driving connection, and helping each other grow, we can also unlock potential and drive our mission forward. And that is what brings us to today, help the community to share knowledge. So from some of you, we received feedback that you would like a space where you can connect around issues that affect your careers and day-to-day functions. And that is why we've created Untold Stories in Tech Hiring. And with tonight, a very timely topic, scaling hiring during aggressive growth. As you know, it's been a bonkers period. The pandemic has been a roller coaster with hiring freezes at the beginning and then record-breaking funding and hiring needs now. Recruiters were retrenched not that long ago and are now the most sought-after talent in the world. It's a strange time to be alive, and we have two great speakers to help us make sense of the current situation and how to deal with it. So please welcome, I don't know, maybe with a little virtual clap, Willem Wijnans, Head of Recruitment at VanMoof, the electric bike company, and Elisabeth Stevens, CEO at Incision, a platform for improving surgical performance. Cool, you can clap, of course, with the notifications. Hey, guys.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Let's start with a little introduction. Elisabeth, do you mind sharing a bit more about who you are and your career so far?
Sure. Well, I originally started my career in the hotel industry. I fell in love with distribution and online. And I joined Booking.com in the early days, 2006, when it was still a small, relatively small startup of 300 people. I stayed for 12 and a half years, and I helped the company grow from 300 to 18,000 people, and in several roles, building teams, building the business. A lot of fun in Amsterdam, in our headquarters, in Canada, as well as in the US. So a great story of phenomenal growth, and I'm really happy to share some of those experiences here today. I left Booking 3 years ago, and I decided to share some of my knowledge and experiences with startups and scale-ups. And today I do that as a COO at Incision, a platform for sharing surgical skills, and I do that as a mentor and investor at several startups here in Amsterdam and abroad. So it's great to be here.
Thanks, Elisabeth. It's a pretty impressive resume already. Willem, do you mind trying the same?
Ooh, shots fired, Brandon.
Shots fired.
Hey, everybody. I'm Willem. I'm the head of recruitment at VanMoof, e-bike company in Amsterdam. Yeah, I've been in hiring for the bigger part of my career. I've always taken a shortcut and focused on mainly tech hiring. Pretty much been doing that for 12 years with a 1-year kind of exodus where I didn't do anything about recruitment, but I actually ran a gym, which was a massive failure. So if anyone has any questions about that, that's fine. But after that kind of stint, I decided for myself and also for my family that I really wanted to work remotely all the time. And now I'm at VanMoof and we're not remote at all. So that's an interesting story, I think, as well. But I can emphasize on that a little bit in this webinar. Apart from that, I have 2 kids, live in The Hague, surf a lot, and I already saw quite a bit of names that I or worked with or conversed with in the chat. So I'm really happy that you are here, and look forward to chatting. Thanks.
Thanks, Willem. I'm not sure if we lost Elisabeth. I can't see her.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Okay, cool.
I'm still here. Yes. Yeah.
Willem, you said 2 things. So one, please, by the way, people, if you have questions, drop them in chat. We'll take them as much as we can. And you touched upon another subject, which is remote. So let's kick off with that. Elisabeth, how has the remote world impacted the way you engage employees?
Yeah, wow. Well, we're a small company at Incision. We're 60 people, but I think over 2/3 of the people working for Incision have only joined less than a year ago, so during the pandemic. And a couple of things, actually surprisingly, it was easier for us to hire for certain roles. We have some roles that are very medical specialists, and now we were able to hire people who were quite far, who live quite far from Amsterdam, who would normally not take a job in Amsterdam, but engaging a team where some people live in Eindhoven, if you want to get them to work in the office, to get together, which we try at least once a week, you really have to organize something that's worth it, right? Why else would you travel for 2 hours? So it's brought some kind of practical challenges, and for the other things, it's actually hard, especially if you're a small company, you're not super structured. We don't have a big HR team, we don't have a big office team, so it is hard to get creative. But we're doing all we can, like everybody. With online events, etc. But it's not easy.
What have you found that works best?
Well, in person still works best. And if you do it well, if you do a good event once a month, it's worth. You can still keep the energy going through online events. But getting together in person has, it's just important, especially if you're small, if you're growing, if a lot of new people, a lot of new disciplines were added. Really important.
Yeah. Willem, next to engaging, how is remote changing the tech hiring landscape? So
it has been changing. I think tech was the first to adopt this, right? The level of remote has only been increasing. Obviously, with the lockdowns, it's been quite the impetus of tech companies like Facebook or other pretty well-known companies that are adopting to remote. And like 2 or 3 years ago, when I started out with like just remote hiring, it was like the obscure startup. What you typically see is that, and this is also discussed in the communities, is that I think remote has increased the salaries of people quite a bit. Also, obviously inflation, but because people can work from anywhere, they get offers from anywhere, and we have San Francisco-based kind of companies that will just offer, for them, the salaries that we earn here are a joke to them, right? So it's kind of like a no-brainer for them to up the salaries, and people get greedy. I think it's also the pandemic that's maybe kicking in sometimes that make that happen. But yeah, for sure, the on the receiving end, it's been hard as a company to hire in any domain, I guess. It's not just tech. But I think on the as a human or as a person who searches for work or just wants to do something meaningful, I think the upside of remote is like tremendous, right? I can work from at least I used to live in Spain where I worked for and consulted for the startups that I worked for. Now I'm back in The Hague and I can make that work because of the hybrid kind of situation that we have going on at VanMoof right now. But it's also sometimes. I think companies, it really depends where they are in their life cycle when they go remote. I think companies who have an office kind of based mentality, and VanMoof is one of them. We still struggle a little bit with the asynchronous kind of nature of what remote brings. People are you can really see who delivers what and when. There are a lot of things that are changing in your culture when you adopt to a remote kind of hiring or remote culture that is often underestimated. And I think what's actually interesting about remote hiring is that it's easier, in my opinion, to hire senior people because they are more adapted to being able to work remote. So, for instance, me, if I would have been working remotely like 10 years ago in my small apartment with one bedroom, the stuff that you miss out on the office, I think like younger people still get a lot of identity from working in an office. I don't think it's all good. The shift that we're seeing, it's good for particular cases, but it's also sometimes a decline in other situations, which. I think you always have to weigh when you think about going remote or not. And in my case, so for instance, our recruitment team is completely remote. So I allow them to basically work from wherever, whenever. Although we need them to come to the office at least once or twice a week, and that's how we kind of found middle ground. And I also don't want them to come more often than those 2 days because I don't want to impede that stuff at the office is more important than remote, but it's a constant juggle. And there's no silver bullet there to basically tell the participants here about how to solve this.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's a lot of nuances there, and especially it's not equally easy for everyone to work remotely. Elisabeth, in your view, what is essential for a scale-up like Incision when competing for talent?
Yeah, it's and I completely concur with what Willem says on the remote part of things, and especially trying to hire the best talent when you're a relatively small and very unknown startup as we are. It's hard, but I think we found a couple of golden nuggets that really work well for us. Incision is a very mission-driven company, so we really have a passion for improving surgical health, surgical care. And what we did, we found I think one of the best recruiters that we could find, not as part of our team, but kind of remote. And she works for us for 2 days a week, and she's equally passionate about the product and about the mission that that we're trying to achieve. And what she's doing really well is she's really matchmaking. So she's not just looking for placements. She's really trying to find, okay, is this the right fit for you? And is this person passionate about the mission we're trying to achieve for Incision? And in that way, and we had to scale up on quite some popular roles, like, for example, head of growth. But due to Lisa's great work, she found a real great head of growth who happened to be very passionate about surgical care because his mom was an OR assistant. So that's just kind of a golden nugget that you won't find if you do this personalized approach. So Elisa, you're on the call. We're super happy with you. So I think personal approach works really well. And next to that, we also have built some partnerships with OfferZen or other really good kind of specialist recruiters who understand the landscape of scale-ups and startups really well. Rocket People is a good example. So I think that's really the personal approach works well, and making sure that you find a match also with the mission.
Yeah, so mission, personal approach, great people, and good partners. How do you approach this with them?
Yeah, I completely inverted as what Incision is doing. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't really believe in agency recruiters or like OfferZen kind of material. So no offense. But at least in the stage where VanMoof is at, right? So I think when you come to, and I think many recruiters or people that work in the talent industry can relate to, is that you kind of, when you join a company, you get a certain tech stack and you get a certain HR stack and you get certain tooling and you get certain hiring managers and you get certain momentum in the business. It's all kind of like one big concoction of variables that you need to juggle as a recruiter. And I think in the case of VanMoof, and also I think maybe also when I was, if I were at the Incision, I would do it maybe a bit different. But what I really believe is that you do hiring yourself most possible, basically as most possible as possible. Whoa.
As often as possible.
As often as possible. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
With a good team. So, and that's not just recruitment, but it's also the hiring managers and it's also the tooling. And basically try to really build a good candidate experience. Because I think the recruiter should be focusing more on their, how do my interviewers or my interviewees pass through the stages. So what I, for instance, manage is way more the level of people that pass through the interview after the screening, because that interview, if there are a lot of people involved, or basically in the stage where the business is talking to these people and they don't pass through to the skills interview, then my recruiters are not really doing a good job. And I'm not really looking at the hires, because I think if that metric gets optimized, hires will follow automatically. And there are like many of these kind of things that you can do in terms of scaling up. But in the case of VanMoof, we had huge momentum, investment, big brand, basically a lot of good things to get in front of talent and get them in. So this is the first place that I actually worked at where I didn't have to source and reach out and grind as much as what we were doing with, as VanMoof. It's we've got so many applicants all the time, even for our developer jobs. So we're actually very in a luxury position. But on the
No, go ahead.
No, but on the other hand, we have if I look at the stack or basically the cards that I got dealt when I joined, there was hugely a lot to optimize, right? So interview processes, making sure that everybody was doing the same kind of interview across the board, making sure that people were scored, making sure that people were timely caught up on. I think building the recruitment culture was one of the most important things, and we're still doing that at VanMoof as we go, right? Because I think that's the most important thing, and you do that with people who work for you, I think. So that's why we've built quite a big recruitment team, and who can really emphasize on getting those people in, and also that people can relate to the recruiters and they really become a strategic partner to the hiring manager. That's basically the way that I always built a talent organization.
Yeah, because you hired, I think, a whopping 350 people last year. Is that correct?
Yeah, so those are new hires, and then we also obviously have backfills. But I focus on the new hires a bit because backfills are not necessarily a good thing. So some are by design, some are not. Yeah, but 350 new people. Obviously, there's quite a bit of retail so we opened, I think, around 11 shops this year across the globe. So you can subtract like 120, 140 people from that. But like HQ, like office-based, it's around 200, around 200 people. And then we focus obviously mostly on tech. And I think the best way you do that is by building a really well-oiled recruitment machine, and that involves everybody. And what I sometimes see, unfortunately, is that recruitment or HR or basically everything that has to deal with people are kind of like submissive to the business, and they just try to follow whatever the hiring manager are doing. But I think if you build recruitment as a really strategic, like central point in the organization, you can go so many places. And we actually hired quite a bit of people. I'm quite adamant about my data and about building integrations with all the different HR tooling, and that I can stitch the data together to actually make decisions. And until now, it looks quite good on the performance of the new hires. I measure which people make their first month probation, their 7 month contract. I stitch it together to our tooling that we use for performance reviews, and then it's looking good. But I'm not gonna lie, like adding 350 people over a year is in my opinion sometimes even a bit, it starts to break. Yeah. And we just deal with that as we go. But we also push back to the business. We don't open up more than 3 or 4 jobs per recruiter. It's just not possible. We don't do it. And I think that's, if you're a strategic recruiter and you can have that conversation with your hiring managers and your leads and what have you, I think that's when you will go places and where you can actually make sure that you hire and retain those people.
Let's deepen that bit out in a question in a second. So just to remind audience, you can please drop your questions. Like we're getting to them as well. Like here's one just in between. Elisabeth, it's for you from Daria. How do you keep company culture great when hiring at a fast pace?
Great. So my apologies. I think my video is not working correctly, but I do think my audio is fine. Let me know if it's not.
Good
so
now.
I'll be talking. Okay, good, great. Thanks for the question. That's a really important one. I think this. If I think back and how we did it at Booking, I'll have to go kind of way back when because it really starts at the top. And I think in the early days, I would say probably around 15 years ago, the then CEO, he recognized how important culture would be to scale in the future. And at that time, Booking had found some real gems that were kind of key to building the success of the company. What he then did, he started to develop kind of a training and a storyline around what is important for Booking, what are the core values of Booking.com. And he started training his extended leadership team through an academy type of training. What we then did as extended leadership team, we started training our managers around these core values. What does it mean, etc. Who then started training their teams around, okay, well, what does it mean to be part of Booking? What does it mean when we say a company value is X, Y, or Z? So it's really kind of an exponential growth. You really have to do all this storytelling, role modeling, explaining what is important until the system becomes robust. So it really takes time. So take time to do the storytelling, etc. And of course, there's lots of nowadays. There's lots of tools. There's lots of ways to emphasize things and to bring in rituals and artifacts. But it's really about telling the story and telling it over and over again to many people so that they can actually live it.
And with storytelling, you mean both the story of the company as well as how you live the values it has. correct?
Yeah, it's explaining why, for example, why for Booking.com data was like holy, like everything was built on decisions were made on data. Why is that important? Why is it important for Booking.com? How do you do it? So not just explaining the why, but what does that mean, and how do you make a data-driven decision, even when you are in recruitment or when you are in office management, right? So there's lots of explaining. At some point, we started asking team members to explain, okay, how do you do it? How do you incorporate this value in your day-to-day? And people start sharing their stories. So this whole idea around it's not just having a set of values on the wall. I don't believe that every startup has some values on the wall and it looks so great, but it's living the values until the behavior really becomes part of the system.
Yeah, so living them and actively promoting them. What breaks when you are going at such a pace as you? I guess Booking.com is probably again the best example here, but maybe also.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think Willem already kind of hinted towards it, because if you go too fast, if you're dependent on kind of the human factor of kind of this transfer of knowledge, it's about transfer of knowledge, it's about changing behaviors, etc. At some point, Booking was hiring, I think, about 100 people a week, which was ridiculous, of course. So there is no way, and I wouldn't know how, that you can keep up with this storytelling, etc. Because you just don't have the time for it. And what we did see at Booking, unfortunately, is that culture started to erode. It was really difficult to keep this very strong, and we had a very strong community feel and core values that were spread across the board. But at some point, it started breaking, and you could see that, and it was simply because it was too fast, and the human factor couldn't keep up with it.
It dilutes because of the speed.
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess not just the size, but also the fact that Booking was super international, like it's a global organization. Does that add extra complexity, or?
Totally, and I think that's also a good point. Also, when you are relying on kind of this human to human transmission almost, you also have to take into consideration the cultural differences, which I experienced myself when I was asked to build the business in Canada. And Canadians are really great people, very open, communicative, etc. So I kind of thought, okay, well, they're more or less similar as myself, as Dutch, because they're super open. One of the core values of Booking was around being open and honest and giving each other feedback. So I just didn't recognize that Canadians had a lot more difficulty kind of sharing this open and honest feedback, because that was not part of their culture. It's way more indirect than what we are used to as Dutch, blunt, direct people. But if that's a core value, you're going to have to spend time explaining why is it important. Help people. Okay, hey, it's fine just to speak up. This is how you do it. And you cannot do that overnight. It takes time. It takes role modeling. It takes practice, etc.
Yes. I think everybody can remember in these times that human transmission skills culture. So thanks for that one. Yeah. You just touched upon this a little bit already. So the relationship between recruiter and hiring manager needs to shift at a certain point when you scale. Can you give a concrete example of what that looks like?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of first-time hiring managers running around in businesses right now. Which is fine, but this kind of also implies that there are sometimes hiring managers who just give the recruiter or the person in charge of talent the job description and wave them off and say, like, have fun, do your thing. And I think that's, like what I briefly touched upon, is one of the most detrimental things which can happen in the recruitment process. We at VanMoof, we really invest heavily on the intake, on the process, making sure the interviews are correct. That enough. Because I really have a problem when a hiring manager wants to introduce another interview just out of the blue, and they need to talk to the CEO. All that stuff you need to eradicate. And I think
because of candidate experience.
Yeah, candidate experience. People, it takes too long, but it's also. This is what I've written about quite a bit, is that I think the hiring process is a glimpse in how the company is doing internally. And if the hiring process is a mess and you get invited for random people and you just feel that nothing's working or that it's edgy, the company is probably also edgy. And where I think, where you go through a very thoughtful process with, that takes care of your, also of the candidate's time, and that understands that, it's not like a 10-hour thing that you can be involved in. Just it pays off. But I think if you look at the hiring manager, the good thing is that a lot of hiring managers, at least when I introduced the process, they were first like, do we have to do this process now? And is this really needed? And I think the shift now is that, once they've gotten momentum in their hiring, they are way more successful. And this is always with every change project that you embark on. You will always have resistance, and then 80% gets it, 20% doesn't get it. And I think those 20% really need to, I think that's the most risky part of the business, because especially for startups that most of the participants here are working for, if you can't grow, if you're in a startup and you don't think that hiring is your responsibility as a hiring manager or as a manager, then there's a lot of just a lot of problems that will arise in these in the working environment. And I think it's up to the recruiter to really put that in front of the hiring manager. And where I think recruiters can be better is by taking away their submissive stance. It's like, okay, I'll please you with whatever I'll just send you resumes, or I'll plan in as many interviews as possible. But I think, looking back, and that's why I touched upon the pass-through rates and the offer to hire ratio and all the stuff that doesn't really have to do with the hires. But really, how can I make sure that I set my hiring teams up for success? And that's kind of the relationship that you want to build, in my opinion. And you need to push back on people that don't want to have that hiring relationship with you. And that's often obviously very hard. And I also have tough conversations with the C-levels sometimes at VanMoof, because especially at C-level, people want a shortcut. People want to do things that are completely out of the process. And obviously, you need to sometimes, you don't want to be like a process monkey, but you do want to, across the board have a great hiring culture. And I think it comes with with building that kind of awareness in the business, and it comes by, it's not built over time. At VanMoof, we're still not there. Some departments are doing better than others. But I think, the most successful hiring stories are all, the hiring managers that picked it up quickly, or the people that have already experienced, where talent and culture and hiring is kind of centrally in the business. I think that's always what I look for, at least when I hire new people, especially in our higher levels, is have they seen excellence in hiring? Because they would need, have they seen this thing at Skill? And I
think, can I just briefly comment on that, what Willem is saying, because I so totally agree with you, what you just said about C-level. And I think that's something, especially if you work for startups, it's just not part of kind of the core thinking. If you're a startup, you're busy building your product, bringing it to market, getting some traction, working with clients. Most of the HR stuff, if I can say it unpolitely, is kind of coming on the aftermath. So what you're doing is kind of advocating for a good recruitment process is super important, because the C-level is not busy with that. They say, okay, well, I just need to find some good people who can help. But the realization, and to be honest, even as a COO, I only started realizing, okay, really, we have to invest in kind of this process and bringing some process and scale to this whole thing, because it's really at the forefront of your success. But it's just not for front and center of people who are starting their business. So please keep doing what you're doing, Willem. It's really important.
Thanks.
Elisabeth, there is a question I think that taps into this from Eric. He wants to know if you've seen strategic resource planning happening successfully in a fast-growing environment. How does it play out? i.e. what department leads it, what tools tech are used, what is your methodology to ensure the recruitment team can deliver at scale?
Okay, so this is about strategy, right? Okay,
Yeah,
so I think when it comes to planning, that's probably a better question for Willem, because I'm not so much into recruitment stack, etc.
No, I think what Willem pointed at is that this can be a strategic advantage almost if done right, and I think you just concurred.
Right. Oh, totally.
Yeah, but
yes,
I can
totally.
talk about the headcount planning and how I think
Yeah.
that's resource planning, right? And
Yeah.
we're at it right now.
Yeah.
And
it's
I think I've never seen a company that does this extremely, like, it's hard. And last year we started in December, don't do December. This year we started October-ish, and we're actually having, involvement from finance. I'm not gonna lie. When I just logged in, I was doing my headcount planning, stitching all kinds of models together because I like to work in Airtable. Finance team likes to work in Google Sheets. Trying to stitch things, it's a mess. But it's also a good mess to have because you really go through the iterations and you try to plan in advance. And what you see, typically everything gets requested in Q1. That's already always a very fun discussion. So why do you want to have everything in Q1? And then in a grand view, the most interesting thing is that, when you see that the whole business wants to hire in Q1, you've still as recruitment or as operations or as finance, you still have your work cut out for you to create some awareness around that. Not everything is, you can't hire everybody in, even if you had the resources and the money. Think about all the onboarding that you need to do. Think about all the interviews that you need to do. Think about so I ran a funny report is that I showed them how much it took the R&D team to hire all the people that they've hired this year in interviewing hours. And I presented to them how long it would take them to interview to hire all these people. And it came around that they would have to spend half of their, half of the quarter just interviewing to hire all those people. So I think that's the kind of awareness that you can bring in resource planning. But yeah, if you know a place where they do this really well, I would love to know, because this is actually something that I am really juggling as well.
There's a question.
Yeah, you'll have to start your own startup with that idea
and solve it. Willem, it ties into this planning a little bit. Paul, Raylan, if I pronounce it correctly, I'm unsure, wants to know, how did you generate enough applicants to hire 300 people within a year? I think you touched upon it a little bit. You have the force of a great global brand behind you, of course.
Yeah.
He also asked, what channels are the most effective for you?
Yeah, so the majority of a really big batch was bike mechanic hiring and our retail fleet, which is actually an interesting story because we do it almost without recruiters. Just one person made all those hires, and we do that because we automated everything. We've built an algorithm together with the guys over at Head Start and Jelmer Koppelmans. I'm not sure what his business name is, but they helped me with kind of building a tool that always outbids our competitors on Facebook and Instagram when we run ads for bike mechanics, and that has upped our inflow tremendously. And then we have this tool's called Fountain. It can actually help you, push people through at scale. So you still do interviews and trial days, etc. So it's still pretty personal, but all the steps are kind of automated. And that's the first 140 people that we've hired in that way. Maybe a little bit less relevant because I don't think many people are hiring in retail right now in this environment. So I'll touch upon the tech stuff. For me, the biggest, I think the biggest wind I got in my back was the brand, right? So we were on complete, everything was bright, the investment, the pandemic, everybody lost their job. The way that we kind of had the momentum because we were also in the news. the French, I don't know if anybody noticed, but we got banned in France, and our PR team, which is, we're pretty good at that. They really made use of that, so we were quite well known, and I think that's where we generated quite a bit of applicants, and also we have obviously our bread and butter is industrial design, mechanical engineering, and now also electrical engineering. And on development, we do nice things, but we don't need the best of the best, right? We don't need the algorithm builders and the people that get hired at Facebook, but we just need like good, solid software engineers who like to do the thing that they're doing. And I think that's kind of what brought us also quite a bit of software engineers, because Amsterdam is quite rich with this group of people. Bring in a little bit of sustainability. I think we can do better, but we are more green than any other just like fintech company or whatever. I think it's the perfect it was the perfect storm to get that many applicants in. But then managing all those applicants and making sure that everybody got the love that they deserved was tough, because when I was on my own in the beginning, and we gradually hired the team that I have now, which is nine recruiters over the year. So also a lot of chipping in from the hiring teams, hiring managers chipping in, making sure that they did interviews, and boarding them on our new platform.
Small question on that.
Yeah.
From somebody you might know, Shamila van der Toren. She wants to know. She wants to know. She's Elisabeth. She's in his team. You might know this person, but Shamila wants to know how many recruiters will you hire next year? And then I have a question for you, Elisabeth. On
she wants to know. She wants to know if she gets promoted, I guess.
Vinny just put down his headphones, so I think he's not answering.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Elisabeth,
okay.
I can't see the name of who asked it. Sorry for that if you asked it.
Okay.
But how do you measure the success of onboarding when you're onboarding hundreds of people across the world? It's a practical.
Yeah. So I think at Booking at some point, of course, we realized, just like Willem said, you have to put processes and tools in place. So as I just explained, kind of onboarding people into the culture was extremely important. So what we started doing is what we actually called the onboarding process. We called it painting. We're going to paint you blue, literally, because Booking is blue. And we did several sessions, which we called the Booking Blue sessions, in which we did all this storytelling, etc. But that's a cultural part. And then there's the functional part of onboarding. And at some point we developed lots of materials and lots of communities and assets that people could use to get on board in their jobs. But what I also realized is that, and I don't think it has changed till today, but it's the role of the manager, the role of the person who is your supervisor, that is still equally important. You can still have a lot of technical and digital assets, but the role of your supervisor, who's checking in with you. Hey, how are you doing? Are you getting along? Can you find what you need? Can I help you with something? Is there something that I can take away for you? So this personal approach, regardless if you're a 10 people company or 10,000 people company, that's still is important. And I think that's also what Willem referred to a bit, is kind of the role and the responsibility of the hiring manager and the supervisor. That should be part of that. And what I sometimes see is that managers don't realize how big their responsibility is in onboarding and getting somebody really well embedded into their team. So I cannot stress that enough, the personal factor.
Yeah, I think you both really agree on that one, huh?
Yeah.
Yes. Willem, Baran wants to know, do you think recruitment data for decision making has changed in the last few years? If yes, what parameters do you track?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I had a bit of a technical. My headphones died. Pretty classic one.
We can hear you.
Can Can you hear me correct
Yeah,
or
yeah.
well done? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So to get back first on Shamila's question, she probably knows how many recruiters we want to hire. So I'm not the biggest believer of building like an empire recruitment team. I really want them to, work as a, really want to not have too many recruiters. And how I do it, I have a calculator that based on past data, how many hires we do per team, how many hires get requested, calculates this is the amount of recruiters. So I guess if everything that was requested, we need a lot of recruiters, but we're probably not going to go there. I think we're hiring a few more, like 3 or 4, so that everybody that's interested, give me a shout. And I'm also I need somebody in Taiwan, and it's hard for me to hire somebody. So if anybody wants to, reload to Taiwan, that's also very much of a possibility. Then onto the data.
Elizabeth, do you also want
I tried this, but
Sorry?
nobody bite yet.
No, I said it was just give Elizabeth to do a call out as well.
I'll go.
If you need anyone, just to.
Yeah.
And I think data is super important. I think the majority of people who want to switch from Greenhouse to a tool that works, or the money that gets made in by Tableau and by Looker to make sense of the data is actually a really big one. Because I think what happens, company is small, you build a talent function as good as it gets, and then you use a tool. Obviously most of the time Recruity, Lever, the usual suspects, Greenhouse, and then you grow. And then all of a sudden you become a little bit more senior, or like a little bit more mature in your business, and then you need to make sense of the data, because then it starts getting important, right? You'll hire some people who actually want to see the data. Maybe management wants to see, like, hey, what is actually the time to hire, or what is the pass-through rate on a certain thing. At least I would like to know, as if I'm a hiring manager, I would like to see where we're stuck, etc. And then you typically see is that it's quite hard to actually present that data in a way without a BI tool or a data engineer. That's why you also see the influx of like tooling on top of Greenhouse, or like things that take the API of Lever and that you can visualize your data a bit better, because it's sometimes a bit big, a bit of a mess to do that at scale. The good thing is that more and more leaders are looking at the recruitment data. I put it in front of on my peers, so all the people that run a division. I have regular hiring meetings with them, and I just present them the data. The only thing is that we only just started using the tool that we're using. So the data, what can you do with 3 months worth of data? So at 6 months, it got a bit better. And then at, now we're in 11 months, the data actually makes sense, right? So I can build quite a bit of cases. There comes my headphones. Nice. That's my
technical support at home.
That's great.
Yeah.
But where was I? I think the biggest.
Oh,
I don't know. You hear me?
yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how much do you care about the data, right? I think it should be ingrained in your recruitment kind of method to at least the data that you can get out of the ATS. Most of the time it's the ATS, and present that to the business. But also look at turnover, right? Ask HR or look in Bamboo or whatever tool you're using, like how many people are actually being replaced, and what does that mean for me as a recruiter in the future? If turnover rates are above 20%, that you're gonna be hiring quite a bit more than what's on the planning in terms of the headcount planning. I think those kind of things you can already look at, and then deeper and deeper you can build like very very sophisticated reports. And that's what I like to do, is try to zoom in on why a person didn't get hired, and trying to see making a case with HR for if it's salary based, or if it's stuck in the process somewhere, or we can even zoom in on like a specific question that we ask all the time, what people answer, etc. But I think that's maybe a few layers too deep. Start high and basically start presenting the data that you can consume.
I think it's such an interesting kind of way forward. If you make the parallel to the regular marketing processes where you sell products, the complete digitized funnel, people look at things like cost per acquisition. So question for you, Willem, in recruitment, are you also is your performance also based on a cost per recruit or cost per
cost per hire,
kind of the
cost per hire is what I do. So it's hard to do, but I kind of take the median of the salary of the R&D team and the amount of time interviewed by that team, and I kind of translate it into a figure of how much like interviewing costs we have, which is hard because you miss out on other things, right? Then obviously you have cost per hire that you can measure because of the agency spend, maybe advertising spend. But to consolidate that all, you need finance, right? So I think that's even harder, especially in my case. We have so many BPs, and for me it's quite hard to have that cost per hire. But for instance, retail, it's really easy for me. I just I know how much time my recruiters spend on things. I know what the cost per hire is to advertise through Head Start. And I know how much time roughly gets spent by people on trial days. But I've yet to really start managing the team on it because it's pretty widely open for interpretation, right? So sometimes, the occasional times that we used an agency is when we, missed out on an offer in the US twice in a row. So then I think the cost per hire gets super high. But is that who's to blame for that? You don't really, it's hard to really put hard figures on it. And also with, for instance, offer acceptance rate, which we measure very, very, very thoroughly, but it could be an indication that something's amiss, but sometimes it's also by design. Sometimes it's you can't really, people say something in the screen that they make this amount of money, and then obviously they interview elsewhere, they get
what is an acceptable offer acceptance rate? Might be interesting.
So currently we are across the board on 87.5, which I think is reasonable, but we have teams where we have 100 and they never miss an offer, and we have teams where it's 50%, where we really need to investigate why this is happening. In tech, it's always a bit, so one of my best recruiters, Lina, she's acing it and she makes a lot of hires, but she also has some hires that don't materialize because of the highly competitive market that we're in. And VanMoof is, we don't pay the what Molly pays or what MessageBird pays or what the fintech companies that have money to burn.
And I was keen to ask that, Elisabeth. So, I mean, you've been on both sides. So, Willem earlier said brand is really like wind in his back, and you probably experienced similar vibes during booking. But now you are in a different position. Like you're in a very specific niche. So, but it doesn't mean you don't have brand or can't build brand. So, how do you go about this?
Yeah, and it's a good point, because it's what I alluded to in the start. It's really about kind of this personal search. It's the work that Elise is doing, but you cannot scale Elise, right? Because it's a personal approach. So what we're now working on with the marketing team is how do we kind of build on our employer brand. So what's our employee value proposition, and how can we tackle it? It's a marketing game. So what distribution channels, what channels will be effective? How can we make it much more personal? So what we're also doing is, because we work with a lot of medical professionals, and we recruit people who are kind of surgeons or are assistants in hospitals to come work for us. So we also use this community to do a kind of Instagram post and to make it really, really personal. We also see sometimes is that, especially in the hospital branch, kind of the offline channels do work well. And of course, you'd like to have everything digitized, but this community is not always looking on LinkedIn. You cannot imagine, but still there's people not on LinkedIn. So you have to you have to get creative. But building the brand, we realized it is important for us to do that, even though it's a niche, but still you have to work on your brand awareness.
Because I can imagine that could also be a benefit because it's a niche, right? So you can dominate it early. Like we just discussed metrics and Willem shared a few. What metrics do you drive and do they change as you grow with Incision?
To be honest, I wish. I love data, and I think what Willem is describing is also describing kind of the level of maturity that the art of recruitment is getting into. I don't think this was, well, I'm pretty sure that 10 years ago this was absolutely not the case, that you would look at things like cost per hire, and can imagine that you have something like an employee lifetime value, if you say so. But for us at Incision, it's just not part of kind of the core of what we do. I wish I had time to do all of that, but I'm happy if we can bring on board people that can get onboarded and get the job done. So we're not there yet.
Yeah, juggling.
Yeah, I think it really depends on which stage the company is, right? If you're a startup and you're scrambling and you're then measuring cost per hire is not going to make you succeed.
No.
I think at the stage where we're at, where we're adding all the hires and we have a recruitment team, and we kind of say that we have a talent first culture. I think it makes sense to back it up with data, because I don't believe stuff when it's not data backed up, so to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
In the past, you've written quite a bit about the open sourcing of tool belt. It's been a while since I have seen one of those articles, but they do help get the metrics out there. So what is the 2021 or maybe even the 2022 version of a good recruiting and maybe HR tech tool belt?
Yeah, I don't write anymore because the kids keep me busy, right? Becoming a father and writing is just not a good match, I think. I am putting out a blog post because Shamila and myself, we're using Airtable quite extensively to basically, what I think you need to be able to do is to make all the tools that you have talk to one another. So when I wrote those earlier blog posts, and I obviously matured along the way, I started out also as a recruiter, like, oh no, sourcing, that's only the thing that you need to do. Source. Everybody who runs a process is bad. And then I matured and I started thinking, a process is actually quite well. And now I'm like more process, and sourcing is still very important. Also with my tools, it's, no, this tool for email finding, the best. And now I'm looking at more like, it's a shitty word, but holistically to, to stitch all that data together and actually make a case out of it. Because that was always my downfall, my culprit is that I'm quite passionate about things, but then I could never back it up with actual data. So, but Airtable is a tool that I would hugely recommend for people to get into, because it allows you to sync, especially on HR levels, with all the APIs that all the tooling has available, to sync it together and to make the data work together. And I think that's one of the unique, or at least the things that I bring to businesses, is that I can take data from, for instance, finance, but also from HR, and I can stitch it together. And I think that's if you have some time to investigate it, how to build a database in Airtable, that's good. And also it doesn't really require coding, so it's quite like it's UI friendly, right?
Yeah, totally.
What I like for you, Elisabeth?
For us at Incision, we work with Recruity, which works really well for us for the stage that we're in. We're not doing massive numbers of hires. It's affordable for the stage that we're in. Hiring managers can work well with us. So for us, it's a really good tool. And I'm pretty sure that for each stage of your startup, there's a different tool. And we used to do it in kind of Excel type of thing. So typically you graduate to your first tool and then the second, and then you come to the level of Airtable and doing your own stuff.
Yeah, so we don't use Airtable for the ATS side of things.
No, it's more for your data. No, of course.
I think Recruity, great to start out with. It starts breaking at some point, like any tool, right? I kind of had the luxury that we didn't really have anything at VanMoof, so I implemented and I betted on a really obscure tool that had nothing, but I kind of believed their vision. And now it's helping me because the data side is actually really good. It's called Ashby, and I urge you to, everybody who's on the call, who might contemplate switching ATSs. It's basically the contender for lever greenhouse. Really good tool, and allows us to, we don't have to have scheduling tools, and we don't have to have sourcing tools, etc., because we can do it from there. And I think, having a bit less tools and getting offline a little bit, I think that's minimizing your the noise that you have from all the tooling. I'm getting old, Brandon.
Go to your local bike shop, get them there. Elisabeth, are there any tools? I'm not even sure if there are any tools, but that help make culture accessible for employees after onboarding, or maybe even help with onboarding?
That's a great one. I'd love to get some tips from the audience, because it's actually something that we are looking into. It's typically kind of you're organizing in the employee journey, as we say. So we now professionalizing our recruitment part, and the second part is onboarding. So really looking forward to some tips and tricks on digitizing the onboarding journey. So put it in the chat if you.
Let's put it in chat. Help a speaker out. There's a question from Alex. How would you define a great hire? And this is a bit of an open one, but it could spark some debate. What is a great hire?
Wow, yeah, there's so many ways to look at it, right? You can look at it from the cost perspective, from the data perspective, from time to hire. If I look at it just from a kind of a soft side of things, a great hire is somebody who's doing a really awesome job, and somebody who can grow with the company. And I always try to find people not for the job that we're recruiting today, but can they grow with where, and we don't know where we're going to be in the future, but we know things are changing. So can this person grow with the company? So for me, a good hire is somebody who, after a year or so, has made some step and has really grown professionally and personally.
But that's an interesting.
But maybe that's
because it starts
soft way to look at things.
I think it's an interesting way, because usually scale-ups and startups, when you hire people know some people only go that far because the environment changes that rapidly. And you said like you went quite a long stage at Booking in terms of like it went from small to massive.
Yeah.
So maybe you have an insight, like how do you spot people that can go a long way within your organization?
Yeah, and it's difficult because it also really depends on the type of role, right? And for certain roles, you need people who are just killing it in that type of role, and you don't want people, you don't want 100% of your team kind of always wanting to go for that next level job, because there's only so many steps you can take. So it really depends, but I think the flexibility and kind of willingness to learn, regardless whether that's kind of in a specialist role, learning more because things are changing, or wanting to develop your own, for example, leadership skills. That's something that I'm always looking for, whether that's at Incision or any other company that I would work for in the future. Is this person able and willing to learn? Because that's just kind of the world that we live in. You need to keep learning. How
do you check for that?
Sometimes people just demonstrate that with what they've done. I think also the preparation of an interview. I get a lot from that. If I ask, or if I say, hey, how did you prepare for this interview? Some people will say, well, I read this and I did this and I spoke to some people and I actually wrote the blog that your founder said. And then I'm okay, well, this person is curious. This person is putting some effort in learning more. Some people just say, yeah, well, I had a look at your website and that's it, right? So it gives me an indication of kind of the eagerness and the curiosity of what a person is bringing.
Yeah, I think curiosity is a big driver.
Yeah.
And one of the things I touched on in the beginning is that recruiters are now one of the most sought after employees in the world. It's crazy, right? But you've hired quite a bit. What helps you attract the best recruiters, and how do you hold on to them in this market?
I think that's mine, right?
Yeah, it's for you. Yeah, 100%.
First step back. What makes a great hire? Somebody who doesn't sign up for the problems that they're leaving from their previous company. That makes a great hire. In my opinion, a lot of people are switching jobs because they experience something at a company which is going to be the exact same as what they're going to experience with you, and you still hire them because they're good, and then it's a shit show. So I think a good hire is somebody who, doesn't take that kind of baggage with them to the next job. And obviously this is really hard to interview on, but I urge you to really investigate on, are people leaving for the right reasons? Then on the recruitment, so I think this is also interesting, right? Founders, they hire a recruiter because then they think like, I'm done, the recruiter is here, I can start building my business again. And this is not how it works. You can have as many recruiters as you want, but I don't think it should scale linearly with the amount of hiring that you're doing. That said, I think building I'm hugely dependent on the network that some of my recruiters have in the ecosystem here in the Netherlands. Still, for me, hiring recruiters is actually the hardest role to fill because it's the majority of us here have awesome jobs and they work at great companies. So why would you leave? That's one. And two, the way that my vision on recruitment might, and I think it does, turn a lot of people off because it's sometimes a little bit, it's quite, if I were like fast forward or fast backward, I don't know how you say that. When I was 25 or something, and there would be a Willem who's speaking right now, data, blah, blah, would be like, maybe not the best fit for me, right? So I'm hugely self-aware that my presence also blocks sometimes the recruiters joining in my team. But I think, freelance recruiters, right? That's still, it's a very big market. There is quite a bit of rotation. So that's nice. I think like RPO opportunities, those companies are getting bigger and bigger, and they actually allow like more junior folks to get employed and do like startup experience. So I think that's really, really beneficial to the ecosystem. And how do you attract them? I think by giving them a great experience, by talking a little bit about the way that you envision hiring and why you're in this, and obviously the growth, because that's sometimes, I think for most recruiters it's actually nice to experience like a high growth kind of situation. When the recruiters are not busy anymore, the company, what's the company doing? That's kind of like the culture right now in this system.
We need to start wrapping up. Elisabeth, I have the final one for you. And it's an open question. Do you have any good career advice for the audience?
Career advice? Wow, that's really, really broad.
Well,
life advice. Well, I think I just said it. Curiosity, stay curious, because I think your curiosity is gonna it's gonna make you learn. It's gonna make you experience new things, getting out of your comfort zone, and really go for the next thing. And I think also planning a little bit ahead, which might sound a little stupid, but think about, okay, where do I want to be? I don't know, next, and how is this next job or opportunity going to help me get there, right? So if you dream big, I want to be the president of the US or whatever, how is your next job at VanMoof going to help you get there, right? So you don't have to kind of think in a linear way, but stay curious and keep learning, and whatever learning path that is. It could be on the technical side, it could be on your personal side, but don't stop.
Life advice, after all, when I asked my 98-year-old grandma what made her 98, she said curiosity. So
oh wow, well, I hope I get to 98. I'm not there yet, but getting close.
Well, not too fast. Thanks a lot, Willem and Elisabeth. Thanks a lot for great insights and being
Thanks for having us
and taking all the time. For everyone, please stay on the webinar. We'll redirect you to a beautiful landing page where you can book a chat with us, and keep an eye out for the next Untold Stories. Will be early 2022. We'll be back, maybe in real life, maybe on a webinar, depending on the situation. Thanks a lot for joining. And yes, we can rewatch.
Yep, and any recruiters that want to relocate to Taiwan, here I am. Talk to me.
All right. Cool. Thanks so much.
Bye, guys.